What's up, world? Second out Calvin, I'm back, live from the crib with it. But before we get to this good shit, let me be the first to say that none of my videos are here to promote any negativity or any violence. All my videos are for entertainment purposes only. Also, let me be honest enough to say anything that we may have allegedly done back in our days, nothing good came out of none of that shit. Also, I want to go ahead and thank all my day one subscribers. I really do appreciate y'all. And to my new subscribers, I double salute y'all. Now let's get to the table and start sacking up this good shit. Today's video is called Puff Daddy and Rick the Ruler. Now, my platform really don't piggyback off, the current events and, the latest gossip. I mainly bring y'all bits and pieces of my life and my story. But by ways of clickbait and just, hitting a button, you know what's going on from Memphis to Miami or from Cali to Carolina in a matter of seconds. It's like you can't get around everything that's going on. So as I'm hearing bits and pieces of what, Buddy going through right now with his big trial up there in New York, it kind of resonates with today's video. And as I'm, hearing, little things about what's going on, it kind of takes me back to back in the 80s when me and my dog, we used to ask each other all the time, how niggas with so much bread find the time to hate on the little niggas. How they make room in their heart to, hate on, the guys that's getting the nigga pennies. It just ain't never made sense to me and my nigga. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to it. And I'm gonna take it back to 1986. But better yet, I'm gonna go a little further and go back to 1982. And all this is gonna line up with today's video. So in 1982, I remember they were starting to build all these new homes in Shadowon, Florida. I'm sure they was building them all throughout the country, but I'm only speaking on what I know and what I seen. In 1982, they started knocking down all the shotgun houses that was in Shadowon, Florida. It was only a few shotgun houses in my neighborhood. You can mainly find a lot of shotgun houses like in Overtown, Florida, over there in Brown South, Florida. But in Shadowon, we had a few. And if you're not familiar with a shotgun house is maybe like a 1 or 2 bedroom wooden home that sat high off the ground. It sat like on some cinder blocks. It sat so high that you can be in the front yard and you can crawl up under the house and you can go all the way to the backyard. That's how high they sat up off the ground. So they was knocking down all these houses in my hood, and they was building up these new homes. And they call these houses like HUD homes. And I think it stood for Housing, Urban, and Development, something like that. It's something the government put together. We'll get into that later on in another whole spiel. But they started building all these new houses in the early 80s, 81, 82. And I remember one Saturday, me and my friends, we were just doing what Jits was doing, because, I was like 11 at the time. And, we heard some music. We heard some DJs. So, back in the old days, if you heard the music, you wanted to get to where the music was at, And we started walking, and then the music was coming from like 2 blocks away from my street. So we make our way around. We found where the music was at, and it was at one of these new HUD homes. So as we standing on the sidewalk, there was a lot of people in his yard. They was barbecuing. They had the DJs in the backyard. And as we standing on the sidewalk, a lady come out the back door and she say, y'all come on in. Y'all come on in the yard. Don't be scared. Come on in. Y'all get y'all something to eat. You know, get some sodas. You know, y'all have a good time. Nice lady. Then, you know, while we eating, she asks us, well, which one of y'all know how to dance? So by me being, you know, the dancer out of the group, you know, everybody point at me. Because, you know, back in those days, you know, we had like a little dancing group, and, you know, I was good at moonwalking, and my homeboy, Gigi, that's my Cuban friend. I talk about Gigi a lot. Rest in peace to my nigga. I mentioned him. I tell y'all how he was one of the first ones to, you know, kind of discover Pitbull. You know, before Pitbull got with Uncle Luke, and Uncle Luke just took Pitbull to another whole level. My dog Gigi was down with Pitbull first. I think he still got some music with Pitbull back in the days. But anyway, Gigi was like the breakdancer of the crew. And then we had Jackie Charles. That's my other Haitian friend. We go back to the sandbox. And then we also had LeBrant. He was down with us. Me and LeBrant, we was like the best moonwalkers out of the whole crew. And y'all may be familiar with the name LeBrant. LeBrant Dennis, that was my friend back in the days. He was involved with that whole situation that happened at the University of Miami. You know, I got something locking up in the water on that. I'm going to do a whole spill on that later on down the line. But he was involved in that whole situation at University of Miami. But he was down with us back in our days. That was my friend. So by me being the dancer of the group, naturally everybody point at me. And she say, well, I give you $10 if you can beat my son dancing. So when you were 11 years old, especially back in those days, $10 was a lot of money, you know. And I was like, yes, ma'am. Like, yeah, because I was down for it, because back then, that's all we did. That's all we did was go from neighborhood to neighborhood and dance against people. You know, I would go to Brown Sub and I would dance against Lil Kenny. You know, Lil Kenny, he was a beast. He was real good. I used to dance against him. Then I'd go over there on 61st over there in the city, and I'll dance against Peanut. That's my dog. You know, I'm gonna mention him later on in the story. And I will dance against Bread, aka Poochie. Sometimes Poochie would come to Shadowon, because his cousin them stayed right around the corner from me. Poochie would come to Shadowon, me and Poochie would dance against each other. Or sometimes I'd go over there and Lodgemire, and I'd dance against Tiny C and 240 Shorty. You know, that's just what I did back in the day. So I was ready. So she go in the house, she get her son, he come outside, and we go to dancing against each other. So not long after that, me and Buddy, we become best friends. I get up in the morning, go to his house, we'll walk to school together. After school, we'll walk back home to Shadowon together. You know, we became locked in. So I remember one Sunday afternoon, he come to my crib, and he was telling me about, you know, what they had done did the day before. And I keep in mind, I'm 11 years old, he's 10 years old. And I was fresh out of church, and we were just sitting on my porch, and he was telling me what he did. So he was like, hey, man, ask your old girl, can you go to the skating ring with us next week? So I knew where it was at and what it was, but I had never been. So I was like, man, I don't know if my old girl gonna let me go. So I was like, but what I could do is ask her, can I spend the night at your crib next weekend? Because around about this time, we were so down, he'll come to my crib and spend the night. I go to his house and spend the night all the time. So I knew she was going to say, yeah. I said, I'm going to ask her, can I do that? And then we'll go from there. So the next weekend, my old girl, she let me go. She said, as long as I was back Sunday morning to go to church. So that next weekend, I spent the night at my dog crib. His brothers and sisters take us to the skating ring. The skating ring sat on 79th Street and 2nd Avenue, and it was called the Superstars Roller Tag. never been before. But the first time they took me, you know, it was like something you saw on TV. It was like that shit just totally blew my mind. You know what I had unseen. He was already used to it, had done been there a whole bunch of times, but that was my first time going. And all I could remember was how crowded 79th Street was. I mean, from maybe First Avenue, the Second Avenue, the Third Avenue, then it skipped over the Fifth Avenue. I mean, both sides of the street was just flooded. You had all type of Broms out there, all type of motorcycles, mopeds. I mean, it was flooded on both sides of the street. And I think the Superstars Roller Tech was owned by the Miami Dolphin player, the legendary Miami Dolphin player, Nat Moore, and a Jewish family. I think they owned it together. Superstars was this big building. Right now, I think it's like a storage place or something that sit right now on 79th Street. But back then, it took up the whole block. And I remember when you walk into Superstars Roller Tech, to the right, they had this big room. That's where you got your skates from, this, that, and the third. Then I remember on the east side of the building, that's where they had a concession stand. And behind the concession stand was this long hallway. Now, the dance floor was already big, but on the left side of the skating ring, behind the concession stand, they had this long hallway. And this long hallway had like 3 rooms, if I can remember correctly. They were like soundproof rooms, and it was 3 separate rooms. They had the Jamaican room. You could fit maybe 20 to 30 people in there. And they had the Jamaican DJs in there, and they played like Jamaican music all night. And then the next room, they had like the slow jam room. They had the DJs in there also that played slow jam music all night. And then the third room, they had the disco room. Fit like 20 to 30 people in there, and they just played like jams all night long. You wanted to be ducked off over there if you really went into the whole crowd that was out there on the dance floor. Now, the dance floor was a whole different beast. Like, everybody used to skate, you know, round and round and round for hours and hours. But then I remember like it was yesterday, once they took the skates off the floor, it just turned into pandemonium. I mean, it was crazy back in those days. And as first time I went, it just became like an every weekend thing or every other weekend thing for us, man. We went all the time when we were Jets. So as you go through the years, 82, 83, 84, it was all about the Superstar. It was all about the Superstars Roller Tech, because you got to get it. You got to understand. The Superstars Roller Tech sat right in the middle of all the projects. You had Edison Projects that sat right there on 62nd Street. Edison Projects was right across from Edison Middle School, and it sat on the other side from Edison Senior High School. So you had Edison Projects right there. Everybody out of Edison Projects used to go to the Roller Tech. Then you had Sabre Palm Projects that sat on the back end of Shadowon. And that's where all my Zoes held it down at. That always been their thing from day one. I want to say one time for Junkie Junk and Kenny K. They doing big things over there at Critical Thinkers Podcast. They holding it down for the Zoes. Y'all go in and check out their platform. Y'all lock in with the home team. They from right out of my backyard, Shadowon, a.k.a. Lil Haiti. But Sabre Palm is where all my Zoes used to be. And they used to go to the Roller Tech back in the days. Then you had the Graveyard Projects that sat right like on 71st Street. And everybody at the graveyard used to be in the Roller Tech. Then you had Largemont Project that sat in front of the Roller Tech. And then you had Victory Home Projects that sat right in back of the Roller Tech. And I talk about Victory Homes all the time because that's where my best friend, that's where he was born and raised at, in Victory Home Project. Then you had the Village Projects and the Poking Beans. And so the skate ring sat right in the middle of all that. And it used to be really a sight to see back in those days. Now, let me touch on something right quick. When y'all be hearing Uncle Luke saying that he started hip hop in the South back in the days, that's facts. I seen a lot of artists come through Miami back in the 80s and all through the 90s, and everybody came through Miami on the strength of Uncle Luke. Back in those days, he definitely was the go-to guy when you came to Miami. He was like the #1 promoter back in those days. I seen everybody at the Roller Tech. I seen the Fat Boys. I seen, of course, Run DMC. I remember seeing Orange Juice Jones. Definitely, I seen the BC Boys. I remember seeing Tila Rock. You know, he used to sing It's Yours. I seen him. And then the 2 Live Crew. You know, Luke brought everybody to the crib, you know, back in those days. You had to really go through Luke when you came to Miami. That's just facts right there. Because every year Luke was throwing big Christmas jams. If you weren't throwing them at the Superstars Roller Tech, he was throwing them at the Miami Stadium or at the original Miami Arena. So everybody had to really come through on the strength of Luke. So now you got to understand, 1983 going to 1984, the whole landscape was starting to change because you was coming out of that heroin era and you was going into the crack era.